Hello everyone. When people in America hear about the Caucasus, many still think of it as a distant region with old ethnic conflicts, post-Soviet chaos, and problems that never really end. It sounds far away, complicated, easy to ignore, but that is changing because the South Caucasus is no longer just a troubled borderland. It is becoming a strategic corridor, a road, a junction where trade, energy, transit, and great power competition now meet. Analysts at the Carnegie Endowment have argued that the new transit logic around TRIPP is reshaping the region, while the International Center for Defense and Security has said the South Caucasus gained new value after Russia's war in Ukraine, weakened the old northern routes. In plain English, the region got more important because the map changed. And that brings us to the real question. Why is Russia becoming more active in the Caucasus right now? My answer is simple. Because Moscow sees the region slipping into a new system. The Caucasus is no longer just a buffer zone on the edge of Russia's former empire. It is becoming a crossroads. And when a crossroads starts moving out of your control, you either adapt to the new order or you try to slow it down before it hardens without you. That is why timing matters. Russia is not suddenly rediscovering the Caucasus out of nostalgia. It is reacting to risk. After the US brokered Armenia-Azerbaijan peace deal of August 2025, Washington secured development rights for a strategic transit corridor through the South Caucasus. Reuters described that agreement as a potentially transformative shift in a region bordering Russia, Turkey, Iran, and Europe. That meant the United States was no longer just commenting on the region. It was helping shape the infrastructure of its future. Then the US moved further in. In January 2026, Trump announced that Vice President Vance would visit Armenia and Azerbaijan to advance the Trump's Road for International Peace and Prosperity, TRIPP. Then, on February 10, 2026, the United States and Azerbaijan signed a strategic partnership in Baku covering economic and security cooperation. Reuters described that step as part of Washington's effort to expand its influence in a region where Russia had long been the main power broker. That matters for one reason above all. Infrastructure is power. When a country enters a road, it enters the future. It gains leverage over trade, investment, access, and political alignment. That is why this is bigger than one peace deal. This is about who gets to shape the operating system on the South Caucasus. And this is where Armenia becomes the key pressure point. If Azerbaijan is central to the corridor itself, Armenia is central to the political struggle around that corridor. Armenia is the soft underbelly of the oil project. It is the Russian pressure, American ambition, domestic politics, and regional change all collide. That is why Armenia parliamentary election in June 2026 matter so much. The core question is no longer just whether Armenia will learn West or stay tied to Moscow. The bigger question is whether Russia can use Armenia's own political system to recover influence without sending tanks, without dramatic escalation, and without openly blowing up the new corridor. For Moscow, that would be smarter play. And I think that is the real danger here. Russia does not necessarily need total control of Armenia. It may only need enough influence to shape the environment around the corridor. A weaker Armenian leadership, a more divided parliament, a more chaotic government, a political class that becomes afraid to move too far from Moscow. That kind of partial return could be enough, and it would have major consequences. Because when we have to ask a very uncomfortable question, does TRIPP stay Trump's corridor, or does it slowly become Putin's corridor in political terms? I do not mean that Russia would physically own it. I mean something more subtle. A corridor does not need to be destroyed, to be captured. It can be politically conditioned, delayed, pressured, surrounded by veto points, kept alive, but only inside limits that Moscow can tolerate. That is, in my view, the most realistic risk. A more Russia-friendly shift inside Armenia would not necessarily kill the corridor. In fact, the more cynical scenario is that the corridor survives, but its meaning changes. Instead of becoming a symbol of a new regional order based on peace and connectivity, it becomes one more road trapped inside old post-Soviet political logic. It stays open on paper, but in practice it works only so long as it does not threaten Russian interests too directly. And this is where the phrase shadow deal becomes useful. Let me be very clear. There is no hard evidence that Trump and Putin signed some secret agreement over the Caucasus. That would be too strong and it would not be supported by the facts we have. But where is a strategic structure in which both sides could end up tolerating part of what the other is doing? For Washington, the main goal may be simple: keep the corridor alive, keep the region from sliding back into open instability, and look in a road that matters for broader trade and strategic access. For Moscow, the main goal may be different: stop Armenia from fully escaping Russia's orbit and make sure no new order in the South Caucasus emerges without Russian leverage. And if that is the case, when a dangerous form of silent tolerance becomes possible, could Washington look away from some level of Russian pressure inside Armenia as long as TRIPP keeps moving? Could Moscow tolerate the corridor as long as it still has enough political influence inside Armenia to shape the terms around it? That would not be an alliance. It would not be a formal bargain. It would be something looser and more cynical. Both powers getting part of what they want, while the smaller country in the middle pays for price. And Armenia would pay the highest price of all. Because in that model, Armenia is no longer treated as a full strategic actor. It becomes the space where two outside logics overlap. Russia wants political discipline. America wants corridor reliability. One side wants leverage, the other wants functionality. And in that setup, Armenian democracy and Armenian strategic freedom both risk being pushed into the background. Recent reporting shows just how high the stakes already are. Putin has publicly warned Armenia that it cannot move towards the European Union while remaining in the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union. That is not casual rhetoric. That is Moscow drawing a harder red line as Armenia tries to move away from old dependence. And that is why the story is bigger than Armenia. What we may be seeing in the Caucasus is a model for the wider world. A world where roads matter more than regimes, where infrastructure matters more than ideals, where great powers do not need to openly divide regions the old-fashioned way. They just need to tolerate enough to each other's core interests inside strategic spaces. One power gets the corridor, another gets political leverage. One avoids open escalation, the other avoids full exclusion. And the smaller country is told this is stability. So when I ask, will Trump's corridor become Putin's corridor, I am not trying to be dramatic. I am asking the central strategic questions. Because if Russia regains influence in Armenia through politics rather than force, and if the United States prioritizes corridor functionality over Armenia's internal political direction, then TRIPP could remain American in branding while becoming Russian in practical political conditioning. And if that happens, then Washington will not have built a clean strategic alternative to the old post-Soviet order. It will have built a corridor that still runs through it. So here is my conclusion. Russia is becoming more active in the Caucasus now because the region is no longer marginal. It's becoming a strategic crossroads. The United States wants a working road. Russia wants to make sure that even the new roads still pass through old leverage. And Armenia may become the place where that struggle decides its outcome. That is why what happens next in the South Caucasus matter far beyond the region itself. Because this is no longer just about Armenia, Azerbaijan, or Russia. It's about what kind of world is being built and who really controls the roads inside it.